The docking concourse of Orbital Selection Station E-7 smelled faintly of ozone and sterilizing agents, the way every council-run facility did. Light spilled cold and hard from long ceiling panels, gleaming off alloy walls and the brushed steel deck plates. Through the viewing ports, the dark gulf of space yawned, broken only by the pinprick scatter of distant stars and the slow rotation of the station's outer habitat ring. Roland Voss stepped through the security archway, his boots sounding a steady rhythm against the deck. The scanner pinged, confirmed his identity chip, and let him pass without comment. He preferred the quiet work of archival restoration in his own lab, sealed climate modules, whispering ventilation, and the soft glow of data holos, but the summons was mandatory. Like everyone else in the program, he'd been called here under the Population Recovery Directive. He understood the policy. Match human men with genetically compatible alien women from allied species, stabilize numbers on remote colonies, prevent outposts from dying out. He didn't argue with the reasoning. He disliked the method, reducing people to files, genetics to statistics, pairing to transaction. The pairing hall was cavernous. Rows of men stood along a central aisle while clerks in uniform gray called names from slim slates. Behind them, in a roped-off presentation space, candidates waited. Most stood alone. One pair, however, stood together as if gravity held them to one another more tightly than the deck. The file Roland had been sent marked them as Kaylee's and Cyrith. Mid-20s in human equivalent years. Survivors of the famine riots on their homeworld. No living relatives. Both listed as ineligible for pairing due to refusal to be separated. Station policy allowed only one candidate per household. Their appearance was striking even by allied species standards. Both had smooth, light purple skin that caught the white overhead light like frost on amethyst. The hue deepened subtly at shoulders and hips. Their hair fell long and silver white, bound at the ends with regulation white bands. They wore thin ceremonial tunics, good for presentation, useless against the station's chill. Bare feet on alloy plating, shoulders held square. Kaylee stood slightly ahead, chin high, eyes sweeping the line of men with the sharp, assessing look of someone accustomed to being disappointed. Cyrith stayed close to her sister's side, hands clasped, gaze lowered but flicking up in brief, quick scans. Together, they projected a silent, unified message: we stay together, or we walk away. A clerk called, Roland Voss. He walked the aisle without hurry, but without hesitation either. His mind ran the same ordered loops it always did: observe, assess, act deliberately. At the podium, the clerk recited the same lines she must have spoken 100 times that day. Per protocol, you will select one candidate. She will be registered to your household, medical compatibility confirmed. I'll pair with both. The words were out before he'd rehearsed the phrasing. The clerk's eyes stayed on her slate. That is not. I understand the rule, Roland said evenly. And I'm requesting an exception. This made her glance up, measuring him. She tilted her head toward a nearby desk where a senior officer sat, a woman with cropped iron gray hair and a faint scar along her temple. The officer beckoned him forward. State name and current vessel, she said. Roland Voss. Independent long-range vessel Vigilant, he answered. Registered as single-occupancy habitat module, with adequate space for 3 adults. She studied him without expression. Why request 2? Because taking one and discarding the other achieves nothing, he replied. Your directive seeks stable households. You get neither if you split them at the door. Keeping them together gives you the outcome you want. The officer's gaze shifted to the sisters. Kaylee's met it without flinching. Cyritha's eyes rose, dropped, then rose again and stayed. Finally, the officer said, there's no standing multi-candidate clause for standard pairings. But under Recovery Act pilot exceptions, if projected stability outweighs cost, and a qualified guardian accepts responsibility, it can be authorized. She tapped her data pad. Dual pairing approved. 14 months, review at 6. You'll report quarterly. If they choose to leave, you facilitate it. Understood? Understood. She turned to the sisters. This is an exception. You're not property. You can file grievance at any time. Do you both consent? Kaylee's answered first, voice steady. Yes. Cyritha's was softer but clear. Yes. The clerk printed a slim alloy token etched with a new household code and pressed it into Rollins' palm. It was warm from the machine. An attendant fetched 2 thermal cloaks and soft-soled ship boots. Up close, Rollin noted details no file conveyed. A faint scar at Kaylee's hip, a healing cut along Cyritha's knuckle, the pale marks of cold across their bare feet. He handed them the cloaks without comment. Kaylee's took hers with a deliberate brush of fingers against his, a test of space. Cyrith accepted hers with a flicker of eye contact, searching for pressure or demand. He gave none. The walk back through the station's service corridor was quieter than the hall. No alarms, no objections. At the docking arm, the Vigilant waited, a lean, dark-hulled vessel, its observation windows dimmed against the glare of the station lights. Inside, recycled air carried the faint tang of metal and ozone, but it was warmer than the hull. This way, Rollin said, leading them down a short passage into the main habitation module. A low table sat before a heating panel designed to mimic a hearth's steady glow. Fold-down chairs, wall-mounted storage, a compact galley, and 2 closed cabin doors completed the space. You'll have your own cabin tonight, he told them. 2 berths, privacy lock works from inside. Bath unit is through that hatch. Heat and water are steady. I'll cook. Kaylee's eyes narrowed slightly, as if measuring the sincerity of those words. House rules. Speak what you need. Touch only with permission. Doors stay shut if you want them shut. I don't drink. I don't raise my voice. If I'm quiet, it's because I'm thinking, not angry. Cyrith tilted her head. And why are you doing this? Because a ship runs better when its crew is complete. And because you deserve not to be separated just to make a report look neat. The faintest shift passed between them, an almost imperceptible easing of the line of Kaylee's shoulders, a slow blink from Cyrith that looked suspiciously like relief. By the time the meal was ready, grain from the ship stores, reheated root vegetables, brewed stem tea, the module was warmer, the edges of their posture less rigid. They ate without ceremony, but with the quiet focus of people measuring not just the food, but the hands that served it. When they retired to their cabin, Rollin checked the lock from outside and inside so they could see it function. You're safe here, he said. Not a promise for all time, just for this night, in this place. Kaylee's gave a single nod. We'll sleep. Cyritha's voice followed, soft as the hum of the ship's systems. Good night, Rollin. He left them to the cabin, returned to the galley, and sat with a mug of cooling tea. Outside the viewing port, the stars drifted past, patient and unchanging. Inside, the Vigilant felt, less empty. The Vigilant drifted free of the station's docking ring with only the faintest tremor through the deck plates. Rollin sat at the pilot's console, watching the NAV screen plot their outbound path. The twin arcs of station lights fell away into the dark, replaced by the steady blink of navigation beacons marking the edge of controlled space. Behind him, the faint sounds of movement came from the habitation module, soft footfalls, a cupboard opening, the dull click of the water dispenser. He let them explore without interruption. On a ship this size, knowing where things were could mean the difference between inconvenience and danger. When he returned to the galley, Kaylee's was perched on the edge of a chair, peeling the wrapper from a ration bar. She glanced up, her green-gray eyes sharp even in casual posture. You were up early, she said. Ship doesn't fly itself, he replied, moving to the heating panel to check its output. And I like to see the stars before the calm traffic clutters the channels. Cyrith emerged from the cabin, the soft soles of her ship boots making no sound on the deck. She moved to the galley's heating unit, wrapping chilled fingers around a mug of stim tea he'd left out. Her eyes drifted toward the observation window before settling on the steady pulse of the environmental control display. "It's warmer in here than the station," she said quietly. "Better insulation," Roland said. "And I keep the heat even, no one sleeps cold." The day's plan was simple: familiarization with the Vigilant. Roland showed them the galley's food dispensers, the water reclamation controls, and the location of the med locker, sealed but accessible to anyone in an emergency. Kayleigh followed him from compartment to compartment, leaning casually against bulkheads, asking about power draws and maintenance intervals. Cyrith stayed closer to each point of instruction, committing it all to memory without comment. She ran her fingers lightly along the smooth edge of the emergency panel in the corridor, tracing it as if memorizing the texture as well as the location. In the aft maintenance bay, Roland showed them the vent filters and the emergency oxygen tanks. "We run checks every 3 weeks," he said. "If I'm away from the ship, you check them." Kayleigh tilted her head. "You go away often." "Not far," he said. "Nearest relay station or supply hub." "A day at most." She exchanged a glance with her sister. "If you're gone, what's the rule?" "Keep the hatch locked. Don't open it unless you know who it is. If a system fails, leave it until I get back. No outside repairs in vacuum without me." "That's not a problem," Cyrith said. "We're not in the habit of walking into danger." By midday, they were in the observation lounge, a narrow alcove with a curved viewport. Beyond, the black stretched unbroken until a smear of blue-white nebula caught the light. Kayleigh leaned forward, her palm flat on the glass. "No storms out here," she murmured. "Not yet," Roland said. "The plasma front near Nimus Drift is due in a week. We'll skirt it." The meal that night was warmer fare, rehydrated grain stew with a jar of preserved greens from his stores. They ate in the main module, the glow from the heating panel casting a steady light. Kayleigh set her empty bowl down and leaned back. "This ship's quiet. Too quiet sometimes." "It's been that way for years," Roland said. She studied him. "You didn't bring us aboard just to fill the silence, did you?" "No," he answered. "I brought you because you were worth keeping together." There was no reply to that, but the way her gaze held his a fraction longer than before said enough. Across the table, Cyrith watched without speaking, her expression unreadable. That night, the Vigilant hummed gently as it slid deeper into unpatrolled space. The sisters' cabin doors stayed closed, but Roland found himself noting that the air in the habitation module felt subtly different, less like a single occupant keeping to himself, more like a space shared by choice. The days that followed settled into rhythm. Kayleigh helped check the forward shield emitters, her movements sure-footed on the narrow maintenance walkway. Cyrith learned the galley's dispensers and began preparing the evening meals, measuring each portion with quiet precision. One evening, as Roland was securing a loose latch on the aft hatch, Kayleigh stood behind him, close enough that her breath stirred the hair at his temple. "You don't flinch," she said. "To what?" he asked without turning. "To me being this close." "Proximity isn't the same as permission," he replied, fastening the latch. Her mouth curved faintly. "We'll see if that changes." Cyrith was different. She came to sit near him while Kayleigh was elsewhere, her sewing kit in hand, repairing a seam in her tunic. "You meant it," she said softly. "That we decide if, or when." "Yes." "No one else said that before," she murmured. "They should have," he said. She lowered her eyes, but he caught the small lift at the corner of her mouth before she bent to her stitching again. When the lights dimmed for ship night, the hum of the systems was steady, the heat even. Outside, stars wheeled silently past. Inside, the Vigilant felt warmer than the temperature gauge could measure. The plasma storm came in without ceremony, a quiet ripple on the long-range scanners, then a rapid bloom of orange-red warnings across the NAV board. Rollin rerouted the Vigilance course, angling the shields toward the oncoming wave. Outside the viewing port, the black was gone, replaced by the slow churn of luminous ion clouds. Inside, the ship vibrated in a low, steady hum as the shield emitters worked to disperse the charged particles. The storm's interference muted external comms, they were on their own until it passed. Kaylee's emerged from her cabin already in work coveralls, hair tied back, light purple skin catching the faint orange glow from the viewport. "What's the situation?" "Plasma front," Rollin said. 2 days duration, give or take. "We'll ride it out. Shields will hold if we keep them balanced." Cyrith appeared moments later, wrapping a thermal shawl around her shoulders. "What needs doing?" He didn't have to assign tasks twice. Kaylee's took the forward shield console, monitoring power fluctuations, while Cyrith moved through the habitation module, securing loose items and checking the emergency lockers. They moved without hesitation, as though the ship had always been theirs to tend. By mid-cycle, the Vigilant was cocooned in light. The ion clouds slid in slow, shifting layers across the viewports, turning the module's interior into a place of soft, refracted glow. Rollin set a pot of grain stew on the galley's heat plate, letting it cook while they worked. When they finally gathered at the table, the air was warmer from the steady output of the shield systems. Cyrith poured stim tea for each of them with unhurried care. Kaylee's leaned back in her chair, arms resting on the table's edge. "This storm will close off comms for at least a day," Rollin said. "We have enough for longer." Kaylee's mouth quirked in faint amusement. "You plan for worse." "I do," he admitted. Cyrith looked up from her mug. "That's why we're not waiting for something bad to happen anymore." She glanced at her sister, then back at Rollin. "This feels like home." The words landed with a quiet weight. Kaylee's hand slid across the table to cover his. A moment later, Cyrith mirrored the gesture on the other side. "Then we keep it that way," he said simply. The storm hammered at the shields, but the habitation module was steady. They moved through the hours in easy rhythm, tending the heat, checking the consoles, and sitting together near the glow panel when there was nothing else to do. When the lights dimmed toward ship night, Kaylee's remained seated beside him instead of returning to the cabin. "You know," she said quietly, "back at the station, I told Cyrith there wasn't a man alive who'd take us both. I thought it was impossible." "It nearly was," he said. "But you did. And you kept your word." Cyrith's voice joined hers, steady but softer. "We believe you now." The rest of the night unfolded without need for more words. They stayed together by the heat panel, Kaylee's resting against his shoulder, Cyrith curled into the chair opposite, her eyes half closed from the warmth. It wasn't a declaration, but it was trust, solid and unforced. The storm passed 2 days later. Space returned to its deep, clear black, stars sharp against it. With the comms restored, Rollin checked in with the nearest relay station. No new orders. No interruptions. Life aboard the Vigilant slipped back into its unhurried cadence. Kaylee's continued to test the edges of his resolve, standing close when he worked, brushing his hand when passing him tools. Cyrith contributed in quieter ways, reorganizing storage compartments for efficiency, learning the ship's control layouts without being asked. One evening, Kaylee's leaned over the back of his chair in the observation alcove, silver hair falling forward. "If I asked for more than this," she murmured, "would you turn me away?" "Not until I knew you wanted it for the right reasons," he said. Her gaze held his for a long moment before she stepped back. "Good." When she was gone, Rollin sat watching the slow drift of a dust ring beyond the viewport. The question had been deliberate, the answer just as much. The balance between them was shifting, still cautious, but moving towards something neither the Council nor its directives could have planned for. By the time the Vigilant reached the safe drift corridor beyond the plasma front, the ship's interior felt as much theirs as it did his. The sisters moved through the habitation module without hesitation, Kaylee's heading straight for the forward console to check long-range scans, Cyrith running a practiced eye over the galley's stores and noting what would need restocking at the next supply hub. The week since the storm had settled into an easy rhythm. Roland found that even in silence, their presence changed the space. Meals were shared more often at the central table. The hum of the environmental systems no longer felt like the only heartbeat aboard. He noticed the changes in them, too. Kaylee's had begun her morning slower, sometimes lingering over tea at the viewport before joining the day's tasks. Cyrith, usually precise and methodical, had moments where her focus slipped into a quiet inwardness. He didn't ask, not yet. The answer came one ship morning when he returned from recalibrating the aft sensor array. The cabin door was ajar, low voices carrying out into the main module. Kaylee stepped through first, her expression unreadable until she met his eyes. Then she smiled, small, but with a depth he hadn't seen before. Cyrith followed, her hand brushing the doorframe before coming to stand beside her sister. "We need to tell you something," she said, voice soft but steady. Roland set the toolkit aside. "Go ahead." "We're both carrying," Kaylee said plainly. He felt the meaning settle instantly, not as shock, but as the weight of what it implied. It wasn't just biology, it was choice. In their posture, in the absence of hesitation, there was no sense of coercion, only decision. "You're certain?" he asked, not from doubt, but because the question needed to exist in the air between them. Cyrith nodded once. "We're sure." He exhaled slowly. "Then we prepare for more than just us." Kaylee's smirk softened into a true smile. Cyrith's eyes held a new, quiet brightness. That day, the three of them sat at the galley table with a datapad between them, building a list. Extra blankets. Expanded food reserves. A second heating unit for the cabin. Reinforcing the inner hatch seals. "We'll need to adjust the sleeping arrangements," Kaylee said, tapping the cabin's layout on the display. "I can install a second heat cradle near the main module," Roland suggested. "The galley's warmer," Cyrith countered. "Keep it here." By ship night, they had a plan. The Vigilant would make for a mid-route supply station within the month. From there, they'd take on provisions for a long run without docking, just the three of them, and soon, more. Later, they sat together in the observation alcove. Outside, a slow-turning asteroid belt reflected thin strips of sunlight. Inside, the glow panel lit their faces. Kaylee's rested her head against his shoulder, one arm around his waist. Cyrith leaned on his other side, her hand resting lightly over his. "Whatever comes next," Roland said, "we face it here. Together." "That's the only way," Kaylee's replied without pause. Cyrith's answer was quieter but just as certain. "We know." The Vigilant sailed on through the black, a small patch of light and warmth against the infinite cold. And for the first time since that cold, echoing haul on the orbital station, there was nothing left unresolved. Out here, beyond the mapped trade lanes and the routine hum of station life, ships like the Vigilant carry more than cargo or passengers, they carry the lives people choose to build, far from oversight and dictated paths. Roland Voss didn't set out to prove anything to the Council. He didn't bring Kaylee's and Cyrith aboard to make a statement about policy. He simply chose the only course that made sense to him: keep them together, make a home, and let the future grow from choice rather than command. The Vigilant was never a large vessel, but it became a space of quiet abundance, heat and shelter, shared work, shared meals, and now, the anticipation of 2 new lives to join them. The Council would log the outcome in its recovery program reports, file it under stable multi-partner household, and move on to the next statistic. But those reports would miss what truly mattered. Because the real success wasn't in compliance or numbers. It was in the way Kaylee's voice softened when she spoke of the months ahead, in the way Cyrith moved through the ship without the careful distance she'd once kept, in the way Roland's gaze lingered on the two of them as if memorizing a moment worth keeping. No law had designed this. No directive had planned it. It was simply three people choosing, each day, to remain on the same course. If you've stayed with their story this far, remember, out beyond the reach of orders and protocols, the most enduring bonds are the ones we choose ourselves. If you enjoyed this journey aboard the Vigilant, subscribe for more deep space tales, hit like to help others find it, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that not all futures are written in the stars, they're written in the choices we make.